These are our Frenzy Faves.
Today, our Frenzy Faves is a favorite Twilight Zone episode.
Chris, tell us about the episode we're looking at today.
Thanks, Professor. We're looking at The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. This was season 1, episode number 22. It was directed by Ronald Winston, and it was written by Rod Serling. Now, for our cast, we've got a long one. We had Claude Akins as Steve Brand, Barry Atwater as Les Goodman, Jack Weston as Charlie, Burt Metcalf as Don Martin. We had Amesy Strickland as an unnamed neighbor, Ann Barton played Mrs. Brand. We had Jan Hanslick as Tommy, Mary Gregory as Sally, Lee Wagner as Mrs. Goodman, Ben Irway as Pete Van Horn, and we had Sheldon Allman and Bill Walsh as the real aliens. Professor, Maple Street seems tranquil enough. What happens in this episode?
Well, it's a beautiful summer day on Maple Street, USA, a cozy suburban street. You know how it is. People are cutting their grass, they're washing their cars, and, they're doing all the things that good, healthy Americans do on a beautiful summer day. Suddenly, there's a loud rushing noise and flashes of light in the sky. The neighbors are all like, well, what was that? But nobody, whatever. Don't worry about it. It's probably a meteor or whatever. Except suddenly, all the power is off. Phones won't work. Cars won't start. Stoves shut off in the middle of making dinner. We can't have that. And lawnmowers won't lawn mow. Even portable radios won't work. So it's not just the, electric company. Even batteries aren't working. Everyone comes out of their house to talk about what's going on. An old guy named Pete decides to go check on the next street over to see if they're having the same problem. The men, Steve, Claude Akins, and Charlie, Jack Weston, decide to go to the police station to see what's up. But the kid Tommy says, oh, they shouldn't leave Maple Street because I don't think the people that shut off the light wants you to. Tommy says he's read stories about alien invasions, and this is how it happens. Also, aliens tend to send advance scouts, so some of the neighbors might really be aliens. Everyone scoffs at first, but by and by, they decide maybe there's something to this stuff. Now, one man, Les, decides to try to start his car, and it won't start, just like everyone else's. But when he walks away from it, it starts up all by itself. Everyone asks, why does your car start, Les? Are you the alien? Are you using alien powers to start your car? Les says, no, I don't know why it started. And they ask him, well, why didn't you run out into the street when all the power stuff started? Everybody else ran out, but you didn't. That's suspicious. Also, someone else says they have seen him in the early morning in his yard looking up at the stars. He must be the alien. They're from outer space. He's looking for home. Les says, no, I just have insomnia. But that doesn't assuage the Maple Street mob. Steve finally decides to try to calm everyone down to limited effect. So now it's getting dark, and the neighbors are keeping an eye on Les's house, particularly Charlie, played by Jack Weston. Steve tries to get Charlie to quit. Yeah, quit spying on him. Go home. But Charlie then gets suspicious of Steve. Don says that Steve is working on some kind of radio in his basement, which is confirmed by a woman that spoke about it with Steve's wife. Who is Steve talking to on the radio? Aliens? They go from neighbor to neighbor with info about how each of them could be the alien. Steve tries to stop the madness, pointing out that they're just turning on each other for no good reason. Suddenly, they all see someone in shadows walking on the street towards them. Tommy thinks it's a monster. Someone gets a shotgun, but Steve takes it away from them. We're not going to be shooting anybody today. But then Charlie grabs it from Steve and shoots. Turns out it was just old Pete who was checking on the neighbor streets. He's dead. Way to go, Charlie. Did Pete find out about Charlie being an alien, so Charlie shot him? Everyone blames Charlie for killing Pete and also for maybe trying to cover up the information Pete had. So they chase him to his house and they pick up rocks and throw a few at him, which caused some glass to break and he gets a cut on his head. A lot of blood from his head wound. Charlie tries to blame Tommy as the alien for starting all the hubbub. Yeah, he was the one that started all this. He's the alien. Everyone agrees, and Steve tries to stop them from hurting Tommy. Suddenly, the house lights start flashing on and off, and power tools start up, and cars start up and turn off and start up, and the Maple Street mob goes crazy, destroying things, getting weapons, and basically going on a rampage. Off in the distance, two aliens observe the chaos. That was easy. Humans love fighting each other. That trick works every time. Just don't let their little tools and toys work and flash their lights a couple times and they'll turn on each other. Soon, we're going to do this worldwide and we're going to take over the earth. Ow, wow. Great story. Great story. I have a couple of quibbles like I usually do with this 60-year-old show. Why didn't Steve go to town anyway? Why'd they listen to the kid at all? Why did Pete take so long on Floral Street? It seems like that would have solved the problem. Either one of those things. Pete comes back, quickly after he left. Yeah, everything's fine. Or they go to town. That would have solved the problem too. I do think this is a super timely story. People get crazy ideas in their heads. And they make assumptions and they believe things without evidence and they just destroy themselves and others over it. I thought Claude Akins was excellent in this. I thought he could have been a bad guy in this, but he wasn't. He was suspicious at first, and I was thinking, he's gonna be trouble. But then he realized everyone was turning into a mindless mob, and he tried to stop it. And I thought he was a great good guy in this. Jack Weston is also fantastic. First, he's like a good, buddy guy with Steve. And then he's a bully, kind of like, getting into Les's face and like blaming people and stuff like that. And then when he, the spotlight comes on him, he's terrified of everyone and he's lashing out. I think of all of the Twilight Zone episodes that we've looked at, this one may have hit me the hardest. This may be one of my all-time favorites and one of the more timely and important Twilight Zone episodes. Chris, what did you think about The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street?
Thanks, Prof. Excellent comments all the way around. Excellent summation of the episode. Yeah, let's get some trivia out of the way. Claude Akins, fantastic character actor, could potentially be one of that guy. Also appeared in the Twilight Zone episode, The Little People. I think I've got the title of that correctly. You might have seen him on a classic I Love Lucy episode where Lucy was about to give birth. I think he was in that episode. Spokesman for AAMCO for the longest time on the radio. Maybe best known, or at least a sustained role for being Sheriff Lobo, which was a spinoff of BJ and the Bear. And it sort of kind of was like NBC's answer, I think, to like the Dukes of Hazzard, if you will. It's the same kind of brand of humor, if you will. He sort of like was the inept sheriff with respect to that. Very varied career. Jack Weston, yeah, let's give him props because he's also could be that guy himself. You might see him. Let's see. Cactus Flower. He was in Cactus Flower with Walter Matthau and Goldie Hawn. Appeared in here and there on some television. He was in a classic episode of All in the Family where he owned a laundromat and he accused Archie of ruining one of his washing machines. But Archie had an explanation, but I won't go into it. But he did a memorable turn in that particular episode of All in the Family. And, of course, Dirty Dancing. I think he was Max Kellerman of the Kellerman Lodge. So you see him everywhere. And he's excellent in this role and everything that he's in. He's a great actor, so is Akins. Good stuff here. Prof, some of the quibbles, like you said, why did it take Pete so long to get Floral Street? That was sort of daylight, then all of a sudden, it's dark at the time passages with this. Some of the little touches, though, were really, really good with this. The acting is sharp. One of the quibbles I had was Tommy himself, the poor actor. He sort of had like a really high voice, if you will, and it just, for somebody who looked like he was in his early teens, he had just a really, really high voice. And I thought his voice might later be dubbed, but it wasn't, and they kept it there. Nothing wrong with his acting by any stretch, but just the voice a little high. I thought that was, took me out of it a little bit there. But nonetheless, all the performance in here were spot on and really, really good. Professor, a timeliness episode. In fact, you could say it's important today as it was back then. And even in my adolescence, it still held a message, because I remember being in junior high, we happened to come upon some literature, and we came upon the script to The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and we each were assigned parts to read this out loud. Now, of course, not everybody could get a part, but I was given the role of Pete Van Horn, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. Then I find out, hey, I get killed off. I thought, am I that bad of an actor? Even at my early age, I was kind of taken aback by that. But, we did it. We all really were enthused about reading this episode and acting it out. And we really got the timeliness of the message. And we had a really, really great discussion afterward about why the characters acted the way they did, and just, the prejudices people have amongst each other, and how plausible this scenario could potentially be with respect to us as a society and us as a world. It was really, really powerful and impactful. And as we were, breaking up from class, the teacher pulled me aside and she says, "Chris, I hope you really weren't disappointed in playing Pete Van Horn." And I go, well, and she said, the reason I cast you, Chris, is because it was a death scene, and I knew you wouldn't ham it up. You would play it straight out of anybody else that we had in the class. So I knew you would take it seriously. So that's why I gave you Pete Van Horn. I hope you are not offended. I said, thank you. Now that you explained it, I appreciated that. So I got a little bit of validation there that she took in consideration my feelings by assigning me to play Pete Van Horn, who gets a death scene. So there you have it. What a great episode, Professor. Yeah, I think if you ask anybody what their favorite Twilight Zone episode is, this does come up numerous times, and I think it's safe to say this is easily a top 10, top 5 episode of all the great Twilight Zones, and that's really, really saying something.
I agree. Yeah, it's definitely one of the best we're covering the best ones, and this one is a standout among them.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it sure is. So that is one of our favorite Twilight Zone episodes.
Not just another Tom, Dick, or Dave. These are our frenzy faves.
Well, Professor,